I grew up. I came of age in the late 70s, 14, 15, 16 years old in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And we tend to associate particular decades with particular things, particular people and events. For example, the 1940s, World War II, the 1950s, sock hops, Elvis, conformity. And some decades, what we associate shifts as a decade progresses. Early part of the 1960s, basically more of the 50s. The later part of the 1960s is what we now simply refer to as the 60s. Hippies, acid trips, protests, and Vietnam. The early part of the 1970s, basically more of the 60s. And the later part of the 1970s, the late 70s. I want to try to describe to you what it was like to grow up in the late 70s. But it's kind of tricky because growing up in the late 70s was characterized not so much by the presence of a particular thing, but more by the absence of a particular thing. So actually, you know what does a really good job of showing what it was like is the movie E.T., the Extraterrestrial. How many people here have seen E.T.? Yeah. So even though it wasn't released until 1982, E.T. very much depicted a group of young people somewhere out in suburban California growing up in the late 70s. And those of us who have seen it no doubt remember that in the beginning, E.T. is accidentally left behind on Earth by his alien buddies, figures out how to phone home, and is eventually rescued by his alien buddies. But what we might not remember in too much detail is a lot of the first part of the movie. After E.T. is accidentally left behind, he is discovered by this kid named Elliot in Elliot's backyard tool shed. And before too long, Elliot has introduced E.T. to his older brother, his younger sister, and like half the kids in the neighborhood. And a lot of stuff goes down. E.T. and Elliot get drunk. E.T. and Elliot get sick. E.T. goes out trick-or-treating with the neighborhood kids on Halloween. And they bond. They get tight, man. It's kind of beautiful. And while all this is going on, there is a particular group in their neighborhood that has not noticed, has not noticed at all that this sweet, homesick alien has landed. And before we go there, let's consider this. E.T. and his alien buddies were not the kind of movie aliens that decided to blend in with humanity, make themselves look like humans, talk like humans, dress like humans. Not at all. One glance at E.T. and you knew for sure that he was not from Petaluma, California. And still, while all this was going down, not a single adult, not one single adult from the neighborhood, including Elliot's mother, noticed at all that not only had a sweet homesick alien landed, but was running all around the neighborhood with their kids. It completely eluded their radar. And that, my friends, is what it was like growing up in the late 70s. That is what it was like coming of age, at least for me and my brother and a lot of our friends. And apparently a bunch of kids out in suburban California. That's what it was like coming of age in the late 70s. The adults in our lives were out to lunch.